We are live. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever you are in the world. My name is Mona with Mona Lu International. And we do focus on helping or working with businesses and also leaders to really undo those cross cultural barriers are preventing them from thriving, from excelling in the new global arena. And as we know, culture is so important, especially today as we are embarking into a very complex world where there will be or there are some type of scarcities, and people are looking to find new markets, new partners all over the world. And we are all just one step away from cultural crash, a phenomena that happens when we unintentionally offend or confuse someone from a different culture. Why is this so important to discuss? Just because we miss out on so many opportunities when we don't know. And there is an equation on my side of the business that we should very much know and be familiar with is the ICE Q, intellect, and then the cultural intelligence. Then the E stands for emotional intelligence. And we have an expert to discuss this with us. Without any further ado, please help me welcome Micaela Passeri to this show.
Yay! Thank you, Mona. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation. It's actually interesting that we're having it today because I've been dealing with some cross cultural things this week already. So it'll be interesting to see where the conversation goes.
Okay, excellent. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Micaela Passeri, and I'm an emotional intelligence and business strategist. I really work with women entrepreneurs that know that there's more, that know that there's something that's holding them back, that's kind of stifling them, but they just can't put a finger on it. And the reason why is because it is something that's deeply entrenched in the subconscious. It's around their emotionality. And because the conscious mind can't hold of all of the information, they're unaware of it. And so they hire somebody like me to help dig through the subconscious, bring it out, resolve it, and create new conversations. So that's basically really what I do. I was born and raised in Florence, Italy. I've been now in the States for 30 years, actually 31 years now this
Oh
year
my
as of
gosh, that's
July.
the same time as I am. Great.
And I'm bilingual, bicultural. My mom's American, my dad was Italian, so I've been very fortunate to really have the best of both worlds, right? Italy and America. So I feel I'm very grateful and I feel very blessed to have had this opportunity. But it certainly didn't come with some challenges, some ups and downs, and really some emotional stuff that I had to dig through, dig deep and resolve. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell. I mean, I could go on for hours to tell you my story, but
Okay. Let's thank you for that information. Let's talk about the topic itself, the importance, and you are the perfect person to tell us about that because you're obviously you were raised in Italy.
Mhm.
That's quite a whole different culture. And then you moved to the United States. I do understand that your father was an American, is an American,
Italian, was Italian. My dad was
Italian, but your mother is American.
American.
So
Yeah.
you were already perhaps introduced to both cultures at early
Yes.
age, but the Italian culture was so dominant because you were raised in that environment. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. So my conditioning, and when I speak about conditioning, I'm talking about the how can I explain this in layman terms? It's the internalization of cultural, peer, familiar conversations that we take on as we grow up and we have experiences. So my conditioning was very deeply entrenched in Italian culture, yes.
Okay, and moving to America, what is the first or some of the first things that you've experienced?
Well, so I mean, as a family, we would go back and forth because my grandparents were here. Everybody on my mom's side was here, so I did have opportunity to experience the American culture, not obviously as in depth, but in chunk bites, right, throughout my young years. But once I came here, I definitely saw some patterns that were very different and that were not comfortable for me because of what how I was raised and what I was exposed to. So a simple example, and I guess the biggest thing that for me is an issue, is that Italian culture is very direct. Okay, we say it like it is. We're upfront. We can even fight, but then a minute after we're done fighting, we'll go have a laugh and have dinner and have a glass of wine, right? American culture is not like that at all. It's actually quite opposite. So American culture is no, 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 no directness, no confrontation. Let's just keep it behind the closed doors. We won't talk about it, and then let me just jab at you and punish you on the other side. So while the Italian culture is very direct, the American culture is more passive. And so personally for me, the biggest thing that really was a challenge for me is dealing with passive aggressiveness. And interesting enough, I literally had a conversation about that this morning on my way to the office to have this interview. So yeah, passive aggressiveness, because in my mind, I just can't understand why somebody would not want to have a conversation.
Yes. And you know, it is so funny that you're saying this because, as people understand it, the American culture is compared to other cultures, like if we're talking about collective cultures, is a quite direct. And then I keep telling people, no, it's not. Perhaps I've been here just like you've been here 31 years. Perhaps it was direct at one point, but it is not a quite as direct as people may think. And I am so happy that you mentioned that, and that creates a problem for people coming from cultures like Italian culture. Now, the E factor, the emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd like you to speak about the emotional intelligence as you experienced it yourself, being bicultural, and also how is it important when you are dealing with other cultures not familiar with yours, and things to look out for.
Yeah. Well, so first of all, let's create the context for what is emotional intelligence. So, emotional intelligence is your ability to self manage and self regulate. Okay. So, what does
Mhm.
that mean? That means that, as human beings, we are emotional beings. So, every time we experience something from the outside world, whether it's interacting with another human being or with a
Mhm.
situation, right? We're constantly experiencing emotions.
Uh-huh.
So, emotional intelligence is the ability for us to respond to what comes into our space instead of react. So, it's that ability to self manage. Okay. So, creating that context, understanding that EQ is really about the internalization. So, what's happening on the inside? So, how am I responding instead of reacting? Then, somebody maybe comes to me, says something that I don't like about myself. I might get defensive. That's a reaction.
Mhm.
Or I might sit, take it all in, hear it, and then come with a response to what they've said. So the response could be something like, well, I understand that you might think that, but this is where I was coming from, right? So it's that's the difference. So when you're having an issue, and I hear myself, I, I don't know if you're hearing me talk again. Do you hear an echo on your
No, you're fine. You're
Oh, that's so
Yeah, you
weird.
sound
That's
really
going
good.
on this side. Okay. Must be maybe something on my side. So when we're talking about cultural, right? We're talking about somebody who is coming from a different culture. We have to do even more. We have to even be more on point. We have to pay more attention. We have to be really go within a little bit deeper, because if we are coming into a new culture with the understanding and the awareness, okay, I'm gonna possibly have some challenges. I'm going to possibly be interacting with people in a different way that I interact in my culture.
Mhm.
Then you can actually really actively and intentionally and purposefully, right, manage and create your interactions. Does that make sense?
That does, yes, it does. It makes sense. And how would you tell, like, an example or an advice? How would we understand the emotional factor in different cultures? Because obviously, if, like you said, if you're dealing with Italians, they'll be screaming and raising your hand, and so you think they're fighting, and then all of a sudden they're hugging and all that stuff. But if you go to an environment, let's say China or any part of Asia, it's a quite different. You won't see that, and their emotional intelligence is a quite at a different level, and how you deal with it is really different. And then here in the United States is different. So, what's the advice? Can we conquer that space of the emotional intelligence when we're dealing with different cultures? And perhaps, let's say, for example, we go into a networking event or any event, and
Mhm.
you have people from all over the world.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, emotional intelligence is not just cultural, meaning that every human being has their own level of emotional intelligence. Culture is one of the factors, but it's one of many factors. So we can't really sit and say these people have more emotional intelligence than these people, because it's really just not true. The emotional intelligence depends on the individual's very various factors. So culture is one, family dynamic is two, traumatic experience is three, right? Level of social status is four. Like there's a lot of different things that go into determining one's emotional intelligence. So we can only look at it from the individual, not from the culture, but from the individual
Hmm.
within the culture. Okay, so that's the first distinction that we want to make, is we want to make sure that we're understanding that we've got to deal with ourselves first, right,
Okay.
within the space. So how can we deal it within ourselves? It's an introspective journey. It is going within. So the moment that, for example, if I'm somebody who is coming from a different culture into a new culture, and I start feeling triggered by certain things, that's a sign that maybe I get to do a little bit deeper introspection and take a look at myself and say, okay, what is really that about? Why am I getting so triggered by that? Is it related to my culture and it's just a cultural difference?
Uh-huh.
Or is it really something that's just me, right? Or is it them?
Yeah.
Like we've got to really go into self analysis,
Yeah. Yeah.
because if we don't, we brush over the issue, and then the issue continues to happen because we're not looking at it. So
Yeah.
it is really a subjective and individual journey within the context of, whether in this case we're talking about people coming from different cultures, right? So within the cultural space, but it could be, we can talk about the corporate space, we can talk about the romantic relationship or marriage space, we can talk about, school. Like it applies to any area of life.
Yeah. Okay. The other day I was speaking last week, last Wednesday, I was talking to a friend of mine from Thailand,
Hmm.
and he made this remark, and I'd like to share it with you, and you can comment on that. He mentioned, he said, "What's wrong with these Americans? I don't understand how they do business. When you talk to them about something, they only approach you if there is an interest for them. They don't have time to build relationship. They don't really are they don't care about you per se. This is how he was saying it. They don't care about you. They just care about what can you do for them right now at this moment, not tomorrow, not next month, not next year. And that just that when he was talking about that, it just created an emotional trauma uh, to this gentleman, that he just forget that I'm not interested in working with them anymore.
Hmm.
I mean, and that's
So,
just that alone can
mhm.
tell you that okay, there's definitely a difference in culture that is affecting the emotional part of
Right.
any particular
Well,
person.
yeah. Well, first of all, he was in reaction, right? And he definitely was, um, he was in reaction to his emotions because of the difference of culture and because he couldn't understand. So
Mhm.
when one has a high EQ, then the approach is, okay, I get that Americans are this way, and I get that me and my culture is this other way. So
Mhm.
if I want to do business with those people, then I get to come to a middle ground and I get to understand that that's what I'm going to be dealing with. Then
Mhm.
it's up to me to make the choice on whether or not I want to do business with Americans, right?
Yeah.
I could choose not to, but the difference is that in his case, he's choosing from a place of reaction, which might not serve him in the long run. Maybe that might forego him on some opportunities that might bring him something, right? Instead, making a choice from a response place, which is an EQ space, which is like, okay, let me take a breath here. Ooh, that bugged me, right? It bugs me that these people do a business in this way, but let me take a breath. Let me just sit here for a second, think about it. If I do I want to do business with them, right? That's the first
Uh-huh.
question. Like, if is it something that's going to serve me in my business? If the answer is yes, then let me figure out a way to create a win-win so that I can do business with them. Or do I want to do business with them? Is it going to serve me? At the end of the day, not really. Maybe it's going to procure me more angst than anything. So for me, my sanity is more important. So no, it's not that important. And I choose not to do business with them from that place. That's a
Uh-huh.
responsible, responsive place. It's different. Do you see, like, the decision making is different? One is reaction, and we have no idea what we're missing out and what we're foregoing. And the other one is we're actually analyzing and saying, okay, let me weigh let me weigh what's best for me, then I'll make a decision,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
that's where, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so as a business person,
Hmm.
if I'm trying to expand my business internationally and specifically in the Americas, then it would behoove me, right, to do business. So then in the response place, I would figure out a way to do business with them. And it would start with accepting the fact that that's how Americans are. So there's a
Yeah.
level of acceptance that would have to come into play in this specific example.
And we cannot take anything personal, of course.
No.
Absolutely not. It's just how people are. People are different. We got to accept that. Um,
Yeah.
one thing that I'd like to ask, are there any, of course, our work is so important going in there and working with leaders, companies, and explaining to them the importance of understanding culture. If you want to do business internationally or just in the diverse communities around us, because as we know, the United States is all buckets of different cultures coming together and doing business with each other. Your work as a emotional intelligence expert and mine as cultural mastery expert, we have a duty to come out there and speak about what we do, to enlighten people about these differences so that they can do better business. So, are there any books, any advices, anything that you can recommend for people to read or seek that will help them with?
Well, yeah, I mean, depending on where one is at, again, depends on every individual's come from, and what's going on in their life and what they're trying to create in their life. So it all depends on where one is at. You can start by reading books, or you can start by consulting someone like me really help you through a difficult situation. Like last night, for example, I had somebody reach out to me She's Chinese, and her mom was hospitalized. Her mom can't speak Chinese, and because of COVID regulations and other factors, she wasn't able to be in the room. And her mom is not being well taken care of. So she was trying to. She needed some support around, how to deal with this, right? How to communicate with the people at the hospital about her concerns about what's happening to her mom and her mom's welfare, right? So it just really depends on where you're at. If you're just really curious, there's tons of books. I mean, Dan Goldman is
Micaela? For some reason, you just froze on me. Can you hear me? I'm not sure if you can hear me here, Micaela, but I stopped hearing you, and I think your screen just froze. I will wait for a few seconds. If you can hear me, that's great. If not, then we will end the broadcast and we will come back another time. I guess that's it. Micaela has left us. We'll be back again with her, hopefully. Thank you so much for your time, and we will end this broadcast. Until next time, stay well. Bye-bye.